All right, I think it's time to jump into some Macbeth.
Oh, right. Oh, God, I forgot. I was like, okay, we're all done. We're wrapped up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your Macbeth Hour.
Oh, God. Okay,
with
Cam.
Cameron Fusil.
Where did we leave off?
I imagine this is the last time we're going to do this.
Why? Because
he's
Macbeth
dead.
died?
Because he's dead. And finally, the show is playing with that death. Because we talked about this last week. The show was sort of dancing around his death, playing with some stuff before and after, but avoiding the actual thing. And Tristan, you threw out that point about maybe Viserys isn't really Macbeth anymore. We will get to that. But first, a little recap. At the very end of Macbeth, the play, I've always hated. It's this guy named Malcolm who takes control after Macbeth has been killed. And the play ends on this pompous, self-promotional speech that he gives about his new reign, the coming era, the power of history. It's annoying, and you get the sense that, yes, Macbeth killed a bunch of people, but at least he was interesting, and this Malcolm guy sucks.
Yeah.
House of the Dragon remixes this ending, and sort of with the petitions for the succession of Driftmark, when all of those are being aired to Viserys. It's an overreach in that we're leapfrogging into the time after his rule because he's already settled these things, but people are walking up to the bench here and giving pompous self-promotional speeches about their claim. And it reminded me of that annoying tone I hated from Malcolm. But Malcolm doesn't get, beheaded. We at least get to see a beheading in this show, and that sort of soothes what it's like in the play. But when Viserys arrives and bristles that this matter has already been settled by him, there's a sense of like you just walked through a ghost. You just stepped in someone's shadow. Like there is something haunting and like, what are you doing? I'm still here. And that brings to the forefront Macbeth's death. And on second viewing, it really made me think that was inevitable as we go into the last couple scenes of this show. To remix Macbeth's death, which happens in the play in single combat versus Macduff, who's a different guy. Macbeth believes he's immortal because of the, can't be killed by anyone of woman born. And Macbeth charges in with a bunch of guys, and Macbeth is like, I'm invincible. They jump into single combat. Macduff, God damn you.
You got it.
Macduff cuts Macbeth's head off. And the House of the Dragon tradition is to boil down these sort of landmark scenes to their core elements and remix them. So to break down that to its core elements, it's you reveal a detail about someone's childbirth. You have a scene of single combat, and you behead a murdering, grasping dictator.
Okay.
These elements do not graft onto House of the Dragon cleanly, which of course gave me a long, Twilight of the Soul of, is this theory clunky, reaching bullshit that doesn't matter at all in Westeros?
Right.
Or has my great friend Tristan come through and woken me up at 3:30 in the morning because Viserys is not Macbeth at this point? Because what Macbeth does, and I had to read through a couple scenes to refamiliarize this. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of this 400-year-old bullshit.
What's wrong with
What
you?
Macbeth does in the last scene before his single combat where he's killed is order the murder of Macduff's family, the guy who will ultimately kill him. He's worried about Macduff coming in and creating his own line of kings. So he sends out assassins to murder the guy's wife and children. And they do. So that's what makes Macbeth irredeemable by the time you get to that single combat. He's truly insane, and you're fine when he dies. But that sort of paranoia about the succession line being threatened, that is not what Viserys is doing here. Through this whole episode, as we've talked about for an hour now, Viserys is protecting his family. He's not the guy wishing ruin on his opponent's family. That's Vaemond.
Right.
Vaemond is the one defaming Rhaenyra and her children as whores and bastards,
Yes.
which is treason, which is directly and publicly endangering their lives, which means Vaemond is the one that's going too far with greed and ambition. Vaemond is the one who brings family into it, women and children. He's the one who sends people to kill the women and children. So Vaemond is the one who gets beheaded in single combat over a detail about childbirth.
Interesting. I like that.
The spotlight continues to move.
Well, then,
I know. And like the ripple effect of that is, what do you do? How do you end an allegory to Macbeth without the character of Macbeth?
I was going to say, who is Viserys now?
We solved that last week too.
Did we?
And I believe this was another Tristan collab. We decided that Viserys was more of a King Duncan now. So Viserys, who is a loyal, good king, like Duncan was, gets to die in his bed of natural causes
Instead of
because
being
there's no Macbeth alive to
stab
come
him.
slit his throat.
Very cool.
And who is the agent of change? Damon.
Yeah, well, yeah. He's
okay.
such an original Shakespeare character, he almost doesn't have an allegory.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's fun that he gets to be the
Yeah.
one sitting there moving the train tracks and
Yeah.
sort of changing the script on,
Mm-hmm.
on
So
us.
does that make Rhaenys Lady Macbeth?
No, it doesn't go that far.
Come on, Cam. No, but that's really great. I
Yeah.
like that a lot because we hadn't really solved the Duncan problem last week. So we're
Yeah.
like, well,
But it's like that double fake out of you hear what reminds you of the last speech of Macbeth, and the guy who we've been calling Macbeth for weeks is sitting there like, what are you talking about? I'm still alive. And then you realize, oh, there's a new Macbeth. That guy gets decapitated, and then Viserys gets to ride out like King Duncan.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
No,
great.
That's awesome.
I love that. I'm trying to make a connection between Driftmark and Burnham Wood, but I don't know if I'm getting there. 'Cause of, you know.
Isn't there so for more Shakespeare? Isn't there like a hunchback in
Richard
one of the
III.
histories? There you go.
Yes, Richard III.
I mean, that's exactly what I thought of when Viserys was making that walk. with Richard
Ham-fisted.
III.
But also, Tristan, the
Shakespeare.
There you go. You got it.
the way you were talking about Aemond having the eye patch and being so predatory and moving around, most performances of Richard III, he's meant to look as menacing as possible. I remember, this was 12 years ago, so it was a different time, but Kevin Spacey talking about playing Richard III.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of braces and things because Richard III he has like physical problems. So he has a bunch of braces, and Kevin Spacey described walking around the stage like a spider.
Sure.
And I thought Aemond had that same like open animal predation.
Yeah.
So you're right, we might be just moving into a different kind of tyrannical Shakespearean style villain.
Very cool. Do you know,
I get the sense when he's on the screen that he could cross over in seconds and be on you and like you'd be dead.
Yeah,
Yes.
I get that
Menacing.
exact same
He's
feeling.
learning from Damon every time they're in a scene together. When I was rewatching the scene of Viserys walking down the aisle,
Yeah.
I was trying to look at anyone else because the first time you only look at Paddy Considine.
Of course.
And Aemond is smiling when Damon cuts off Vaemon's head.
Cool.
Really?
Oops.
A terrifying reaction in that
is
situation.
terrifying. Yeah,
After
'cause,
seeing
like,
your dad limp down the aisle for 20 minutes.
Because Helena like freaks out and like turns aside and everyone's
Yeah.
like, and he's like, nice. It's so terrifying.
Bad dude.
So you know, we started this Shakespeare conversation when talking about George R. R. Martin thinking of Viserys as King Lear.
Right.
I'm not familiar with King Lear. What happens to King Lear? Does he die?
The
at
whole
end?
thrust of it's
I mean, it's a tragedy, but
Yes.
like, what happens?
well, the whole thrust of Lear is that he is sort of playing games for who's worthy of the succession. So he's
Yeah.
playing the kids against each other.
Yeah.
And that is not really what I ever saw Viserys
No,
doing.
he's not
I'm,
that manipulative. Yeah.
I'm slightly confused by why George threw out that comparison because I would pull in 3 or 4 other plays before I
It's
even
like
get to
he
Lear.
just read Old Man Who Has Daughters.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, he obviously knows more about it than that.
No, I
because
know,
The
I
stuff
know.
he's pulling into Game of Thrones is the actual European history that Shakespeare was playing on.
Right.
So
uh-huh.
he's more of a contemporary of Shakespeare than he is influenced by him.
Yeah.
I do think we'll continue to have characters like that.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple weeks ago when we hypothesized what's next from this pool to jump into, we said religion and witches. We're looking at Helena
That's
to grow.
right.
Yep.
And we've seen that validated in this episode because Allison is full into the light of the seven and religion and spirituality.
That's a really great point.
So I think that's what we have to look forward to.
Well, and now I'm thinking back with Helena, that makes sense because Helena's prediction about the beast beneath the
The boards.
boards.
Yes.
The explosion in the Sept is like the culmination of the intense power and corruption of the church at that time. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Like, so that
So-
makes total sense.